Hey, I'm Jake. I make RPG supplements and videos about Pathfinder 2, mostly just the videos at this point. I have old supplements, but mostly I just talk to people about Pathfinder because it's awesome. So this is obviously a video about the undead archetypes. Welcome, thank you for being here. This is my continuation of the Halloween season because I missed 2 weeks of it, so it's not over yet. Ghost! We're gonna do the Ghost Archetype. The Ghost Archetype starts off with descriptions in every section. I'm going to be talking about a lot of aspects of this. So if you have any knowledge of this at all, you might be bored. But this is going to be an extremely deep dive into Ghost. Your ties to the living world cling to you in death, your unfinished business reducing you to a spirit. Your soul carries on, but your body is gone. Your mind, too, may have changed. Though death can impact thoughts and desires in all sorts of ways, most ghosts experience stronger, more volatile emotions and are frequently overcome by their past ties. A need to reconcile the past overwhelms other needs. Motivations can change over time but are always strong. Pragmatism, compassion, and foresight fall before a ghost's fundamental desires. I love the feel of this archetype, obviously, because I'm doing a video on it. I'm going to start with the powers and abilities, and then talk about the little sidebar of incorporeality, flight, and rejuvenation, because there's tips on how to handle this. Ghost dedication, level 2, feat. Prerequisites, you died and returned as a ghost. So you actually have to die in order to take this archetype. I like that part, because you can just work that into the story. Hey GM, I'd like to blow up in this encounter. Can I do that? Great, thanks. The dedication says, you have risen as a shell of your former self, a spirit of mist and anguish. You gain the ghost, spirit, and undead traits and the basic undead benefits. I'll discuss those in a moment. Your undead craving is to settle your unfinished business. You also gain the incorporeal trait, except you can't pass through solid objects unless you select the pass-through feat. Being a ghost has the following major effects. I'm going to pause there, and I want to discuss what I just said to you, and then I'm going to go into the details of what all the other abilities are that are part of the dedication. So this is like a really complex dedication. So to start off with, it says you gain the ghost, spirit, and undead traits, and the basic undead benefits and incorporeal. So we're starting with ghost. The ghost trait, what does that do? Nothing. If you look at the ghost trait, it just links to a page of everything that's in the ghost family that's a monster, and how to make your own ghosts, and information about ghosts, including special abilities and powers, which is really cool and should totally be worked into the character. Talk to your GM about it. So the ghost trait does nothing at all. I guess it gives you permission to take stuff from the ghost section. Cool. Which we could actually use later, so that's good. The spirit trait, it gives you the spirit trait. The spirit trait says, spirits are ephemeral creatures defined by their spiritual self and often lacking a physical form. That's it. It does nothing. Closing that. You also get the undead trait. Listen to this, and then the next thing I'm going to read supersedes this. So the undead trait doesn't really mean anything. Once living, these creatures were infused after death with negative energy and soul-corrupting evil magic. When reduced to 0 hit points, an undead creature is destroyed. Undead creatures are damaged by positive energy, are healed by negative energy, and don't benefit from healing effects. Let's go to the basic undead benefits. It says, the archetypes and skeleton ancestry that follow can give the basic undead benefits detailed here. These are somewhat different from the normal undead creature abilities to better fit player characters. So the basic undead benefits aren't actually basic undead benefits. They're the basic player undead benefits. And you get the following things. Necrol. You know the Necrol language, so you talk to undead creatures. I really prefer that to just be like, you have a psychic awareness of other undead and you can communicate psychically, because how do you learn the ins and outs and details of a language when you die? That doesn't make any sense. You also gain undead vision. You gain low light vision, or you gain dark vision if your ancestry already has low light vision. Cool, that's a great benefit. Negative healing. You are damaged by positive damage and aren't healed by positive healing effects. You don't take negative damage and are healed by negative effects that heal undead. Sound familiar? Just read that to you in the undead traits. Negative survival. Unlike normal undead, you aren't destroyed when reduced to 0 hit points. Instead, powerful negative energy attempts to keep you from being destroyed even in dire straits. You are knocked out and begin dying when reduced to 0 hit points. Because you're undead, many methods of bringing someone back from dying, such as stabilize, don't benefit you. When you would die, you're destroyed rather than dead, just like other undead. So all of this states the undead traits, abilities, and things that you get for being undead, for having the undead trait, and adds to it. So the undead trait also doesn't matter. So far, out of the ghost archetype, you gain the ghost trait, which doesn't do anything except give you options if your GM is cool and works with you to give you special powers later. The spirit trait, which also does nothing. The undead trait, which also now does nothing. And the basic undead benefits, which actually does several things. Why didn't they just do that? Continuing with the basic undead benefits. Immunity to death effects. You're immune to death effects. This keeps you from being automatically killed or from having your dying value automatically increase, but it doesn't make you immune to other parts of the spell or effect. For example, you can still take mental damage and become frightened by a phantasmal killer, you just don't instantly die from it. This mattered more in previous editions. There just aren't that many auto kill effects. That's done for like player enjoyment. Like they've been removed and toned down. So this doesn't really do much. Unless you're like really high level, then like a couple of effects that otherwise could have killed you, which you still would have gotten a saving throw from, can't kill you. It doesn't do much. Disease and poison protection. You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws or any other defense against disease and poison. Cool, but you're dead, so how can you be diseased or poisoned at all? That doesn't make any sense to me. Undead hunger. While you don't eat or drink the same food as humanoids do, you usually have thirsts and hungers related to your undead state, such as a ghoul's hunger for humanoid flesh, a zombie's craving for brains, and a vampire's desire for blood. Additionally, while you don't sleep, you enter a state of quiescence for at least 4 hours a day to recuperate, which lets your undead flesh reknit and recover naturally. Many undead choose to rest when the sun is at its highest. I like the way they put that. That's cool. Alright, so far from the first section of the Ghost dedication, before it goes into any abilities it gives you, you gained a whole shitload of abilities and changes to your character. Let's continue on with the rest of the dedication. You also gain the following major effects. Floating. You can float, but are still tethered to the ground. I think of that as like psychically tethered to the ground, because like you haven't quite figured out how to fly yet. Replace your land speed with an equal fly speed. You can't rise more than a few inches above the ground when you fly. This means you can move above many types of difficult or hazardous terrain without moving slowly or being damaged, even though you can't fly without limit. You can leap, high jump, long jump, and take similar actions and use your fly speed for any calculations that would normally require your land speed. Okay, so really you're just like, it still has to be over ground, so it can't be over water, so you can't like float over water, so you're just immune to some terrain effects. That's gonna have to vary depending on your GM. Like ice, yeah, you'd be immune to it. A bunch of foliage, well, that reaches pretty high. It's not just an inch off the ground, so you're probably not immune to that either. So floating like feels cool, but doesn't really do much there either. You also gain the incorporeal trait, except you can't pass through solid objects unless you select the pass-through feat, which is at later levels. Being a ghost has major effects. The incorporeal trait. An incorporeal creature or object has no physical form. It can pass through solid objects, including walls. When inside an object, an incorporeal creature can't perceive, attack, or interact with anything outside the object. And if it starts its turn in an object, it is slowed 1. Corporeal creatures can pass through an incorporeal creature, but they can't end their movement in its space. An incorporeal creature can't attempt strength-based checks against physical creatures or objects, only against incorporeal ones, unless those objects have the Ghost Touch property rune. Likewise, a corporeal creature can't attempt strength-based checks against incorporeal creatures or objects. Incorporeal creatures usually have immunity to effects or conditions that require a physical body, like disease, poison, and precision damage. That doesn't apply to you. They usually have resistance against all damage except force damage, and damage from strikes with the Ghost Touch property rune also doesn't apply to you, with double the resistance against non-magical damage. So some of this doesn't apply to a player. It allows you to pass through solid objects. And it says you can't attempt strength-based checks. Keep those in mind. Returning to the Ghost dedication section at the beginning says you also gain the incorporeal trait, which we just discussed, except you can't pass through solid objects unless you select the pass through feat. So what does this do for you? What does the incorporeal trait actually do for you? Well, you can't attempt strength-based checks against physical creatures or objects. Great. Great. Okay, yeah. We want that trait. Continuing with the major effects of the dedication of Ghost. Items. You can transmute physical items to make them part of your incorporeal form. This requires spending 10 minutes with the items within reach, during which you transform the items into part of your form. You can return items you already have incorporated to a corporeal state at the same time. It's sort of like putting your ghostly, misty essence into a thing or taking it out of a thing. So like just making it cross over to you or back to the realm of the living. Which is a neat ability and kind of necessary for a player. The items retain all their runes and other abilities, need to be invested normally if they have the invested trait, and need to be worn, held, or stowed appropriately. In other words, they're still the same. Once you've incorporated the items, you and other incorporeal creatures can use them normally. You can interact with them, release them, and so on. Your incorporated weapons gain the benefits of the Ghost Touch property rune, allowing you to use them normally against both corporeal and incorporeal creatures. That really just means that you're able to continue adventuring. Not really that special. Incorporated items become corporeal again only if you transmute them back or are destroyed, in which case they drop to the ground under you. That one's interesting, because you can transmute any item into your kind of essence and then destroy it, and then essentially it comes back to life in the physical realm. Wands, anyone? Ghost wand? Fire once? Fire again? Break it? Oh, it's destroyed! It becomes material again. I'm going to reinvest it. Or not invest it. I'm going to re-incorporealize it. And then you just keep using it. That's a little BS, but fun! Why wouldn't you do that? Another major change to the dedication, or from the dedication, attacks. Your unarmed attacks become magical and deal negative damage instead of their normal type. That can screw over certain builds, so plan for this. Strength. Unlike most incorporeal creatures, your strength modifier is not -5. You keep the same strength score you had before you became a ghost, though you can only attempt strength-based skill checks, typically athletics checks, against other incorporeal creatures, as normal for an incorporeal creature. Against incorporeal creatures, use your strength normally to determine the results of athletics checks, strikes with melee weapons, and any other checks or damage rolls dependent on strength. Okay, so this negates part of the incorporeal trait. The part that was the only thing that did something to you. That was a drawback. So the incorporeal trait doesn't do anything for you. I understand. Like mechanic-wise, it says you have the trait, so you're technically incorporeal, but so what? Functionally does nothing. And this is a weird complaint I have. So you gain the Ghost, Spirit, and Undead traits, basic Undead benefits, and the incorporeal trait. None of that does anything functionally except basic Undead benefits. That's it. It's just weird, kind of silly. Like wasting space in a book. Another major change when you become a ghost. Ties that bind. This is all role-playing. When you become a ghost, work with your GM to choose a bound site and unfinished business, both of which matter for your character's story, as well as some ghost archetype feats. Your bound site tethers you to the physical world and is typically either a location important to you in life or the place where you died. Unfinished business keeps you from passing to the afterlife. If someone resolves your unfinished business, you decide whether to accept the change and pass on or to fight it. If you pass on, you get a few minutes to say your goodbyes and then move into the river of souls and the afterlife. Your character ceases to be. If you fight the change, you remain, though you and the GM might determine a new unfinished business. If you are physically destroyed, you cease your existence as a ghost, but still might not be able to pass on to the afterlife if your unfinished business is incomplete. In this liminal state, It just means between two different states. You might come across strange energies and become another sort of creature, or anchor to a summoner and become an Eidolon. That'd be kind of interesting. Like, you could gain some Eidolon benefits, but then you'd lose your ghost benefits. So that's really just you become an NPC and you make a new character. So the ties that bind is really vague on purpose, so the GM has like free reign. Now I'm going to talk about the side panel of incorporeality, flight, and rejuvenation. This is just a sidebar, mostly for the GM to know, but this is something that player and GM both have to work on together. It's just information on how to run this ghost. Many ghost abilities have been significantly toned down to work for a player character, most notably flight and the ability to move through walls with incorporeality. The GM has the option to loosen the reins on both abilities, allowing movement through walls as normal for the trait, granting an unlimited fly speed of 15 feet, or both. The fly speed replaces any other abilities that involve flying, and any feat that upgrades the PC's flying capabilities, such as the unlimited ghost flight feat, might instead upgrade the speed by an additional 5 feet. However, a PC who can constantly fly and move through walls can trivialize many low and mid-level challenges, as well as a fair number of high-level challenges, consistently outshining or leaving other characters behind. The GM should consider this option very carefully before allowing it and adjust the game accordingly. I'm not going to read the next part of the sidebar because it relates to something later, a different feat that you can take as a ghost. So let's just talk about that. This sidebar is useful for suggesting how to make this cooler. It kind of sucks by itself. It's not great. I know we've had this conversation before, but that was 6 months ago. I've had a lot more time and experience to study this, and I still don't like it. When you become a ghost, what do you expect to be able to do? Float through walls, fly. That's pretty much it. You don't get that. It's not a ghost. It's like some weird, hazy, clear, immune to some hazardous terrain person. So if I were to run this, it would really depend on what level at which the player wants to take Ghost. If like you're 15th level, just give them flight. Just do the 15 fly speed or half of their speed, which, you know, could be a lot higher than 30, depending. And allow them to move through walls. Maybe put a slight restriction on it, but we'll talk about that in a moment because there's a feat about walking through walls. We're going to cover that then. If, however, this is at like 2nd level, which could happen, you're going to have to know your player. Like, you have to know if they're going to take advantage of this or not. If they're going to screw the party over and just like fly through walls to get away from the enemies. And then everyone will like wipe. It'll just be a total party kill. So really, you gotta know who this person is before you're like, yeah, you can be undead, man. They're awesome. Because it could fuck your whole adventure. All right, so me as a base, I'd be like, okay, you can like move through walls at like 5 feet around. Or 5 feet per action, sure. Meaning you can still get through it, but it's not fast. And you like when you're inside a wall, it's not like you can help anyone, and you can't really do anything to yourself. Maybe spells on yourself, sure, like defensive, I guess. But it's just to give you the ability to actually move through objects, which is what a fucking ghost should have. Next feat in the archetype, Frightful Moan. It's a level 4 feat. It takes 2 actions. It has the traits of Auditory, Divine, Emotion, Enchantment, Fear, and Mental. Once per 10 minutes, you lament your fate, forcing each living creature in a 30-foot emanation to attempt a will save against your class DC or spell DC, whichever is higher. Success. The creature is unaffected and temporarily immune to frightful moans for 1 minute. Failure, the creature is frightened 1. Critical failure, the creature is frightened 2. That's useful, but okay, so if your GM allows a player to play an undead, they're probably allowing the other players to play whatever the hell they want to, and so they might be undead too, so this might be great. But if you have living people in your party, this also affects your friends, which sucks. So I would have to change that too, and just say that, oh, it's enemy living creatures, because why would you want to scare your friends? Other than that, totally useful. Fear every 10 minutes? Yeah, why not? And it's an area. Cool. Next, Archetype feat level 4, Ghostly Resistance. Your ghostly form becomes innately weaker, but also gains resistance to many forms of damage. Your maximum hit points is reduced by your level. You gain resistance 1 to all damage except for force, positive, and any damage done by a weapon with a ghost touch rune, or any other source that acts like a ghost touch rune. This resistance increases to 2 if the source is non-magical. At 10th level, the resistance increases to 2, or 4 if the source is non-magical. At 16th, it increases more. So at 4th level, you are at least giving up 4 hit points to gain resistance 2 to most sources of damage. That's actually great at this level. That's cool. It keeps reducing your hit points. Like, you're always going to be a little bit behind on hit points, but it's to support you being resistant to damage, which is just nice and useful. And also kind of like funny, because like you could take flasks of acid to the face and take no damage because you're resisting it. It's a little hard for me to comprehend how you could be hit by physical things at all, but okay, fine. It's a player, I get it. We have to accept some strange things for rule balance. Next archetype feat. Level 6, Ghostly Grasp. Your control over your ghostly form grows. You gain the advanced undead benefits and can interact with physical objects with limits. You can attempt strength-based skill checks against physical creatures and objects. You can interact with physical objects, but the action has no effect unless you succeed at a DC 20 athletics or DC 20 thievery check. Personally, I think that should be a will save, because it just makes more sense than athletics or thievery, because you don't have a frickin' body. Let's see what advanced undead benefits gives you. So this is really the main thing you're getting from this level. Advanced undead benefits. Dark vision. You gain dark vision if you don't already have it. Greater disease and poison protection. Your bonus against disease and protection increases to +2. You gain poison resistance equal to half your level. That's like convenient and useful in nearly every campaign. Paralysis and sleep protection. You gain a +1 circumstance bonus to saving throws or any other defense against effects that would make you paralyzed or have the sleep trait. You should be freaking immune to sleep. Like, this character can't sleep by choice. So why would you? It's not like it's overpowered either. It just makes more sense. Anyway, so from a realism perspective, this is just freaking silly. You don't have a body. How are you diseased or poisoned or paralyzed or put to sleep? But as far as game balance goes, for a player character, this is quite nice. I mean, like, think about it this way. It's a druid feat, I think level 6, to get poison resistance or assassin. And those are the main ways you can get it as a character, unless it's your ancestry. And you get that as part of this at 6th level. This is actually powerful for a player. I just think it doesn't make any sense. But you can talk to your GM and see if they want to change that a bit, make it a little more awesome. Next archetype feat, level 8, Ghost Flight. It takes 2 actions. Once per day, you can suppress your tether to the ground, overcoming your resistance to fly free. For 10 minutes, your fly speed doesn't restrict you to only a few inches off the ground, allowing you to travel to any height you choose. For 10 minutes, level 8. That's great. From a player perspective, that's really good. Like, you could have the fly spell if you're a caster, but you have to have access to the fly spell, and not all casters do. because duh. But also, you don't have to be a caster to take this archetype. And in which case, like, a fighter or barbarian would never get fly. So, like, I could see a ghost barbarian being terrifying as hell. All right, so anyway, this is a good feat. It's fine. Like, it even makes okay sense to me. Like, if you've seen ghost movies, like there's so many different ways people have interpreted ghost movies, but like when people die in ghost movies, they usually just think of themselves as being wherever they were in normal life, living their normal lives. Like, they don't comprehend that they're dead. So it makes sense to me that, like, if your character died, it might take till level 8 to figure out that they can fly. Because it's unnatural for humans or bipedal humanoids to just cut ties with the ground and float. Yes, it actually passes my realism check, which is weird. Not much does. I might be a picky bitch. So level 10 feat, pass through, takes 3 actions, frequency once per 10 minutes. Prerequisites, you have to be master in acrobatics. Filtering your form through the substance of an object, you can pass through walls, doors, and more. You fly up to your speed. During this movement, you can try to move through one object. Attempt an acrobatics check as you try to enter its space. The DC is typically 30 to move through a wall of up to 5 feet, 15 for an ordinary door, and 10 for thinner structures like windows. The GM might set the DC higher for especially dense materials like adamantine or lead, or for barriers that are magically reinforced. You can't pass through an obstacle made of magical force, such as a wall of force. You have to make a check. Success. You move through the object, treating the square within it as difficult terrain. If you end your turn inside an object, you can move out of it only if you pass through again, or use some other means of moving through a solid object. As normal for being incorporeal, starting your turn inside an object makes you slowed 1 for that turn. Failure. Your movement ends and you trigger reactions as if you moved out of the square you started in. So, if you have seen my Ghost Rants and Rambles complaint video, you know what I'm going to say. This takes 3 actions. You do it once every 10 minutes. If you end your turn inside a solid object, you're slowed 1 for that turn. Meaning you can move once with this ability, and if you get stuck in an object, you're there permanently. Because you have 3 actions, you spend them to go into a wall. You don't get out of the wall, you stay in an object. It'd be funny if it was like a table, just like stuck in a table. You just have this table floating around in your midsection for the rest of your life. Anyway, so you're stuck in an object, at which point you become slowed 1, which means you lose an action. This takes 3 actions. You can never do this again. This is just built badly. It doesn't function. So if you want to include this, GMs, you're gonna have to consider that this doesn't work. Like, you can even just remove 1 of the restrictions and it'll still work. Me? I'm just going to include this as like the first feat dedication power. You move through stuff. You don't have to be a master in acrobatics. It's still once every 10 minutes, sure. But you're not slowed if you end up in an object. It makes sense to me. You can move through objects. You figure it out really quickly and you just go. Once per 10 minutes, you can spend actions for an entire round moving through objects. It's not all that overpowered, and it's really, really fun. Anything that puts more creative tools and joy in the hands of the player, you should do, because it's going to give you more fun too, and all the other players at the table. This is why we play this game. To have random creativity and joy in what we're doing. Just give them the toys. Let them have fun. It's not going to screw over your adventure. You know what? If it becomes a problem, just say, this wall was magically treated by the dwarves that created it. Can't move through it. Nope. No. And on the other side of it, wall of force. There's no way. Fine. Great. you can still change the world to compensate for little issues this might bring up, and they would be little, because the player still has to work along with the group. They're still together. It's awesome, though. All right, so that would make you feel really cool as a player. Next archetype feat, level 12, Rejuvenation. The call of your unfinished business recreates you after destruction. When you're destroyed, you reform after 2d4 days within your bound sight, fully healed. If your unfinished business is resolved while you're waiting, you pass on immediately unless you and the GM determine you have new unfinished business. Now I'm going to go back to that sidebar that we covered at the beginning. The last paragraph of the sidebar says, combining the Rejuvenation feat with a character whose unfinished business is tied to the adventure essentially makes the character immortal. As with a Lich's soul cage, even a group using other undead archetypes might want to avoid the Rejuvenation feat or have it function more like a Rejuvenation token. Let's look at the Rejuvenation token. It's a level 9 feat normally that you have to be a skeleton to take. You tie yourself to the material plane by implanting a piece of your consciousness into a weapon, piece of armor, or other item that's precious to you. As long as this object is intact, even if your body is destroyed, you can be restored to the exact state you were in the last time you made daily preparations with this object in your possession. The soulbound object can be used as a special focus for Raise Dead, Resurrect, or similar magic. This warps the spell to bring you back in your skeletal undead state rather than bringing you back to life. Because this is an ancestry feat for skeletons. Pharasma can't prevent you from returning when the spell is modified in this way. When you return, you permanently lose a memory that was precious to you, in addition to any other side effects of the spell that brought you back. Your soulbound object becomes inert until you spend 1 week of downtime to anchor yourself to it again, further fragmenting your mind. I think that is fair. That is an understandable, balanced way to handle Rejuvenation. Because then you're only going to be able to use it once in an adventure, and if you die again, then you're screwed. Just like somebody else who goes to dying 3 multiple times. Is that unfair? If they go dying 3 3 or 4 times and they just keep coming back from it? No. This isn't unbalanced. Just make it like the Rejuvenation token. It's perfectly fine. I even suggest that. It's interesting, the developers of Pathfinder 2 usually put forethought into every aspect of what they're doing. I don't know how they lost their heads on... Oh, thanks, Loot. On pass-through. I don't know. Just somebody didn't come into work that day. They just called in sick, playing golf. I don't know. Whatever. So, Rejuvenation, level 12 feat. Totally fair. You come back once during an adventure. That's just cool. And it feels powerful. You can even choose to sacrifice yourself for the greater good because you know you'll come back. And that also feels heroic. And fun. Alright, last archetype feat, level 14, Unlimited Ghost Flight. You put your connection to the material world farther behind you, your fly speed no longer restricts the height you can fly. When you use Ghost Flight instead of its normal effect, you gain a plus 10 foot status bonus to your fly speed for 10 minutes. Great. So you can always fly, not just fly a few inches off the ground. You just always fly, and you can hit the rocket boosters to go faster for 10 minutes. Level 14, totally fair, fly, great. Okay, so going back over from the end, Unlimited Ghost Flight, level 14 feet, perfect as it is. Rejuvenation, level 12 feet, little difficult to work out details that are balanced, unless you just take Rejuvenation token and use it instead. I suggest that because it's easier. And it still lets you come back from the dead. Pass through, level 10 feet, useless. You have to change it somehow. Good luck with that. It's really going to have to vary depending on the GM. As I said, for me, maybe it's on the end of... Well, not maybe. It is on the end of being overpowered. But I don't care. Because there's ways that I can work around it if I need to. And it makes the player feel like they are freaking special by being a ghost in the adventure. But, so, okay, pass through. It's usable if you change it. Otherwise, it doesn't exist. Ghost Flight, level 8. Fine. Makes sense. You can fly, you've learned how to fly. Granted, it's only like 10 minutes a day, but that's okay, because you're learning how to fly. Ghostly Grasp, level 6 feet. Advanced undead benefits, totally useful. The athletics or thievery checks don't make sense to me, so I'm going to change it, but it's balanced. Go ahead and use it. Great. Level 4 feet, Ghostly Resistance, also balanced, useful. Not always useful, but sometimes it's useful. Level 4 feet, Frightful Moan. Totally useful, even if you don't remove the stipulation that it affects every living creature. You just have to strategize a little bit. So this, great as it is, I'm personally allowing it to affect only enemy living creatures if you want. That's me. It makes sense to me. And the ghost dedication abilities. Well, a lot of this is fine, I guess. Like, the traits at the beginning don't mean dick, but, like, they build on each other. So, like, basic undead benefits at the beginning is useful. And then later you get advanced undead benefits, also useful. The incorporeal trait doesn't actually matter until you gain the ability to move through shit. So, okay, you have it. It's like signifying that you should be able to, that you're a ghost, but doesn't do anything. So anyway, the dedication still does more than many other archetype dedications because of basic undead benefits. I mean, it also allows you to have ghost touch weapons and armor. And that's cool. And you're unaffected by some hazardous terrain or difficult terrain. Your unarmed attacks are also magical. It's useful. It's actually a great second level archetype dedication feat. And there aren't many that are. So I know I bitched about Ghost in a previous video, but mainly just for one or two things. This is a really cool, fun archetype. Totally use it. I would love to like have my whole party die and become ghosts, and then they have to do the rest of the adventure. Because it'd be interesting. Totally just like flipping them over to the other side of reality. Anyway, so obviously this is the Ghost Undead Archetype video. More Undead Archetype videos are coming out. They're going to be in a playlist if they aren't already. Thank you for joining me today. This is part of my fortnight of Halloween that's going to be continuing until almost Thanksgiving because I love Halloween. I'm grateful for all of your help and the words in the comments. It's really fun to communicate with people about the videos or about their lives or about their friends in the comments or on the Discord. Go to the About page, join the Discord if you like. And thank you to my patrons. I am grateful for you people. Not just because you're cool people, but also you help support this channel and make it happen. So if you want to help this channel out like them, go to Patreon, links in the description, or you can join as a member of this channel and also help us out, or just like the video, subscribe, and share. That also helps quite a lot. Now, if you would like to continue this vein of Undead, there's going to be a link here for the Undead playlist. And over here, there's going to be a link for the build that I made that has a ghost in it. I love it. Oh, I love that build. It's an oracle. Go look at it. It's fun.